Aston Martin puts a suitcase full of money on the table and offers $1 billion to Max Verstappen. The date for Lewis Hamilton's debut with Ferrari is out. Next Wednesday, there will already be a car on the track in Fiorano. Toyota admits for the first time interest in returning to Formula One. Felipe Drugovich renews his contract with Aston Martin and will continue as the team's reserve test and development driver. The details of the contract come out, and Franco Colapinto sold his soul to Flavio Briatore. Interlagos racetrack with emergency repairs is rushing to be ready for the 1,000 miles happening next week. The Dakar rally ends, and it ends with a victory for Brazil. Lucas Moraes won the final stage on Friday, January 17, 2025. It's a packed news report, and I suspect that next week things are really going to heat up. So sit down so we can talk about everything. Let's go. Aston Martin put a big suitcase full of money on the table and offered Max Verstappen $1 billion for a 5-year contract. The offer would be starting in 2026. Even though Max Verstappen has a contract in place until 2028 with Red Bull. But you know, in Formula One, contracts are made to be broken. But let's start from the beginning. One, where could this information have come from? So, according to a report from the Daily Express, apparently, Daddy Lawrence and his buddies are already talking to current and future sponsors of the team. Warning, Max Verstappen is coming? And then it's that thing, the information seemed to have that initial plausibility because we know Red Bull is in the process of falling apart. Adrian Newey has already gone to Aston Martin. Honda is coming in 2026. They have infinite money and a brand new factory. And there's also Andy Cowell, the guy behind Mercedes hybrid engines, back in the 2014 to 2019 era. And besides that, there would be this smell of plausibility because it makes sense that this leaked through the sponsors. After all, once the information leaves Aston Martin for potential partners, the number of people who can share it increases. For a journalist over at the Daily Express, you know how it is. But this news might not have been here. It hadn't come. Last night, Aston Martin made a definitive denial, saying, no way, we haven't offered any amount to Max Verstappen. Because the number one rule for starting to believe in something in Formula One is, it's that they denied it. And once the information is denied, we know that someone is getting close to the trail of the story. Does it make sense for Verstappen? Does it make sense for the Strolls? Fernando Alonso isn't infinite, and the team is investing a fortune and an additional $200 million a year for the next 5 years. It would be nothing more than the imagined course of things. They want to build a super team in Formula One, and they are, gathering the pieces. But is Red Bull going to just sit back and watch all of this? No, they might try to counterattack, but Max Verstappen probably has a performance clause in his contract. Putting the pieces together. Oh, but Red Bull will watch all this in silence? No, she can try to counterattack, but Max Verstappen probably has a performance clause in his team contract. If Red Bull isn't in a certain position in the constructors' standings by a specific race in a given year, whatever year it may be, he's free to negotiate with other teams. I've already talked about this and other clauses that we see a lot out there. In the contract video that came out in December, link in the description, 2024 was the year of one of the biggest silly seasons in history, with a lot of people changing positions. But Verstappen hasn't changed. Leclerc isn't either. There are several names out there that can still move around. Let's check. It won't be the end of the world like it was last year. But there's still more to happen ahead. The debut date of Lewis Hamilton with Ferrari was announced today. It will be on January 22nd at the Fiorano circuit. In Italy, Hamilton is expected to drive the 2022 car, the F175, and there's also the possibility that he will drive the 2023 car. But tests, etc. are not prohibited. Yes, testing is prohibited, but you can drive cars that are up to 2 years old, so that opens the window for the 2023 car to hit the track with Hamilton. Inside information from Ferrari has been published here, and they're saying that yes, the Italian team will do everything they can, so that Hamilton arrives at the preseason in Bahrain, 100% acclimated, settled in, ready for his new home. There's a lot you can start working on in the simulator, but there's a lot that can only be resolved on the track. The Italian police, the Carabinieri, are preparing a special security plan. I posted about this on Instagram, and I'm sharing the story here. The Fiorano circuit, in fact, I've been there. Is it worth checking out? The video is surrounded by several local roads and curious people. The tifosi gathered along the sides of these little roads. So, the police are concerned about a crowd along the roads and the obvious risk of accidents. So, Ferrari and the local authorities have been doing everything they can. With 4, 6, 8, 10 hands to avoid problems, I remembered that I need to write to Lorenzo over in Maranello and say, hey, if you get the images of Hamilton debuting with Ferrari, send them over so we can post them for everyone. It's definitely a historic event. Since we have a 7-time champion debuting with Ferrari, one thing that I admit I thought would never happen. I thought Hamilton was going to retire with Mercedes, but it's happening. And before you ask me, yes, there are limitations. The tires used are the same size, shape, etc., but they have a different rubber compound than what goes to the actual track for real. And when will Ferrari use cars from this year? On the so-called filming days, there are only 4, and you can run a maximum of 1,000 km, 1,000 total kilometers, 250 kilometers per day. Toyota has finally admitted it outright because we had already suspected and were reading between the lines. And there's interest in returning to Formula One. The Japanese giant, you might remember, raced in the top category of motorsport between 2002 and 2009. He did very little, invested an amount similar to the big teams of the time. Ferrari, McLaren, Williams, but they never managed to win a race, let alone compete for championships. The best they managed were podiums, and if I'm not mistaken, a pole position, I think it was in Bahrain 2009. I'll put that information down here. But I think it is. Toyota had already been moving around here, and there in a peripheral way. He talked a lot with McLaren, and that's why Hirakawa, their driver in WEC, laughed. He was a reserve at McLaren, and when did you see that McLaren would continue with Mercedes until 2029? Redirected its priorities and signed a deal last year with Haas. Haas has a different business model in Formula One. She was the first to do that. Who buys everything they can from Ferrari? Which means that Haas has never tested with old cars. Also, due to a lack of funds, they never did simulator sessions with the others. And they had to use the wind tunnel, also from Ferrari. But Toyota, even after leaving Formula One, maintains in Cologne, Germany, a cutting-edge facility with 2 state-of-the-art wind tunnels, which are even used by Formula One teams, including McLaren, who, until recently, was using it. And now they're debuting a new wind tunnel. Even Ferrari uses this wind tunnel in Germany when they need to calibrate their own wind tunnel to know if the measurements are correct. This wind tunnel from Toyota in Germany is considered the standard, the best there is, so much so that it is used to calibrate the others. So Haas closed this technical partnership with Toyota and gained access to all of that. At the same time, Toyota moved behind the scenes and bought High-Tech, that Formula 2 and Formula 3 team that belonged to Oliver Oakes, who is now the team principal of Alpine. He no longer had time to manage the team and preferred to sell it then to the Japanese. The Japanese are buying a Formula 2 and Formula 3 team to bring in their Japanese drivers. And to form a driver academy, that in 5 or 6 years they'll have a good lineup for Formula 1, of course. So don't be surprised if in a year, 2 or 3, we're starting to see Japanese drivers as reserves at Haas and sometimes even fighting for spots as full-time drivers. All of this probably has to do with the spotlight that Honda is getting. Since 2021, Honda has been shining. Won the Drivers' Championship with Verstappen that year, and then the Drivers' and Constructors' Championships with Red Bull. 22 and 23 didn't take 24. And then for the first time in many years, one of their executives said, yes, this week, we're getting closer and heading towards Formula One. Surprise. Felipe Drugovich has renewed his contract with Aston Martin and continues as a development test driver doing simulator work. For the year 2025 in Daddy Stroll's Green Team, Formula 2 champion in 2022, since 2023, Drugovich has been their reserve driver. He did several free practice sessions. He works a lot on the simulator and has many test days with cars from previous seasons. He was very close to taking a full-time seat in Bahrain in 2023. When Stroll injured his wrists, in the end, the owner's son was deemed fit and raced in that event, even finishing in 6th place. Drugovich was in talks to take the Williams seat in 2023 and 2024, but it didn't end up happening. Last year, he raced in the European German Series and did tests for Cadillac. And right now, he's in this waiting orbit to see if a spot opens up for him in Formula One. In fact, he signed up for the 24 Hours of Daytona, which takes place between the 23rd and 25th. Next week, for the Cadillac car. They finally showed up, the details. And Franco Colapinto, who will be the reserve at Alpine this season, I think 𝘾𝙤𝙤𝙦𝙤, he will be the main driver. He also signed a contract with Flavio Briatore, very much in the style of the Italian boss in the 90s and 2000s, for 5 years. Briatore, we know. If you don't know, I'll tell you now. He's famous for managing drivers with predatory contracts. What are predatory contracts? Contracts where he can do anything and the driver can't do anything. Normally, anyone who signs with Briatore hands over the power to him to decide where, when, how much they earn, which car they'll drive, and if they'll even race. Several drivers in the past signed these agreements. Some did well. Martin Webber, Franco Alonso, etc. Others didn't fare so well. There are classic cases like Arno Bull, Giancarlo Fisichella, and Heikki Kovalainen. That Briatore was plugging and unplugging them like they were light bulbs, switching them around, putting them in one team, taking them out, and so on. Well, Colapinto, who really didn't have much to do, he had to sign with Briatore because otherwise he would just be sitting there as a reserve in a team, Williams, that has Sainz and Alonso as the main drivers. You have to agree with me that it's better to be a reserve. Where Durham and Briatore are, who is the manager of the Australian, he can be dropped at any moment. Then in a team that paid a lot to bring Sainz and pays a lot to have Alonso. But I think that 𝘾𝙤𝙤𝙦, Briatore is going to affect Durham because he's interested not only in the speed of the Argentine Colapinto, but also in the sponsorship money he brings. The Interlagos racetrack is undergoing emergency repairs to get the circuit ready for the 1,000 miles race, which takes place next week. I shared on Instagram and posted some shorts earlier, but if you don't know, let me tell you what happened here. The Interlagos racetrack has only one tunnel for access to the inner part, and over there, no. The trucks carrying cargo from important categories like EKI, Formula 1, and stock car pass through. Because of this, when these big events happen, the track has to pause its activities, and heavy-duty trucks have to drive on the racetrack, which is never ideal. But a truck is very different. A truck with just one trailer, without a trailer. So the circuit needed an additional tunnel, including because at events like Formula 1, there's an absurd amount of traffic with vans, creating congestion even in the parking lot for everyone to leave during peak hours. They then started digging a tunnel that would come from the gate. It would go under the opposite straight and come out by the hospital. Well, during the excavations, a stormwater drain was hit at some point. And in December, we had rain. These rains ended up damaging the soil underneath as the water washed away the dirt and cracks appeared. In the last stage of the Paulista, in December, the solution was, since it was happening. That's right. Speed up the process, do all the excavation, stabilize the soil, build the tunnels, cover and concrete everything, to then lay down the new asphalt. At this moment, the one who told me this was Marcelo Pinto, the director of the racetrack. The phase we're in is the compaction phase. Then comes the asphalt. I asked him about the holding of the 1,000 miles. I'll also talk about the tickets for you. There's a link down below in the description. And he told me that following the schedule, the track will be cleared between the 20th and 21st. And the calendar for the 1,000 miles starts on the 23rd and goes until the 25th. So, we have a race scheduled. About the 1,000 miles, it's public service information. I'm even going to open it up here to give you the precise information that was sent to us by the organizing team. And I will be there. We have the website for purchasing tickets and 3 types of tickets. Paddock Rock Club, 1,000 Sites Festival with covered grandstand, and 1,000 Sites Experience. The 1,000 Sites Festival with a covered grandstand costs $50. The 1,000 Sites Experience costs $350. And the Paddock Club costs $850. You can buy it down below and we'll meet there. I will do a Brit walk live before the start. Keep an eye here on Instagram and YouTube so you can watch passing through like I did last year among all the cars, showing everything to you. It was a lot of fun. It was pretty funny. We were up late. Well, not too late. It must have been around 10:30 at night. Walking down the straight at Interlagos, showing you car by car. And the great thing about the 1,000 sites is that we have prototypes, Porsches, Ferraris, and Mercedes. And back there, because it's a very democratic grid. Voyage, up Brasilia Beetle. It's really cool. Everyone has fun. A 12-hour race, a big party. Finally, we had Lucas Moraes' victory in the last stage of the Dakar rally. The champion was Yazid Al-Hajji. I think that's how you say it. Yazid Al-Rajahi. He finished the last stage in just 10th place, managing the big lead he had. Lucas Moraes won, and with that victory, he ended up in 14th place. Overall, he was doing well, but he had some successive breakdowns. He lost a lot of time, and even having won a special stage in this last stage, he ended up in 14th place. This week, on Tuesday, we had an episode here that was very successful on a highly requested topic, active suspension. That one from Williams in 1992 and 1993. We explained in detail how the system was conceived, copying an idea from ambulances, how it worked, and so on. I'll leave the link down below in the description. I think you guys will like it. On Wednesday, the story of the dry spell of John Alesi at the 1997 Australian Grand Prix, which ended up becoming a source of trolling within the Globo team, with a sound technician who later Alesi helped to fit the part on the guy. I learned this by reading Reggie Lemmay's book. By the way, we're about to schedule our interview with Reggie. Speaking of interviews, this week, actually yesterday, I interviewed Keith Sutton, the Formula One photographer, who was Ayrton Senna's personal photographer. And he shared some excellent stories with us here. The video has already gone to editing and will be subtitled. Obviously for you all, and it comes next Sunday on the 26th. Hello everyone, I'm Keith Sutton, F1 photographer and photographer for Ayrton Senna. You're watching Splash and Go. All right, so leave a like there, come on, it doesn't cost anything, you know. It really helps the channel a lot. Break it for me, break it for us, and don't forget to leave your hype with us. This new YouTube tool for you to keep showing and signaling to the algorithm that you like us, that you like the channel, that you like this work. And that's how we keep growing at full speed, so you don't miss out on anything. Our social media is being shown here: Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and TikTok. Now I have my personal Instagram, Rodrigo_Splash and Go, for you to see behind the scenes and so on. In addition to our notification groups, WhatsApp, Telegram, and now also the notification channel on Instagram. They're showing the handles here, and the link is also down below in the description. Okay, so you already know Friday. Thanks. Big hug, it's Friday, and take care. Be careful